Welcome, everybody.
Hey, hey. Good boy, Tucker.
Work smarter where you want.
This is learning at its most fun.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Takeover Tuesday event. Today we have Derek Notman with us, and he's the founder of Conneqtor. Derek and his team are out there every day in the field, finding what works and doesn't work to share what it takes to succeed digitally with you. I know I even subscribe to his emails because your content is just so great. And as an advisor himself, he really understands what it takes to build, run, and improve a practice. He's a longtime friend of Redtail, and we're excited to have him here. So Derek, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nora. I really appreciate being here and just stoked for everyone to be with us today. We're gonna have a little bit of fun. Obviously, Chuck Norris is joining us today, so we're gonna enjoy that. But I think digital marketing is something that is really top of mind for a lot of us, because at the end of the day, we know that that is one of the ways to drive, more clients. But there's really an art and a science to it that I have learned the hard way. Like most of you, I started 15 plus years ago, cold calling, door knocking, networking, all of that stuff. But it just doesn't work like it used to. So I had to go down this journey of figuring out what is digital marketing and how does it work. So I've learned a number of things. These are things that I practice and I do, not just preach. So we'll go through all this. We're going to have a section towards the end for live Q&A. So save your questions for then, unless you've got something specific to one of the slides, just pop it in there and I'll try to get to it. So there you go. It sounds like some people are having some audio issues. I hope not. It sounds like everyone else is okay. If you do, let us know. Hoping it's okay. Anyway, so let's jump in. So we got to kick some digital assets here. And really, at the end of the day, this is a way that we stay relevant, that we are where people can find us. We can thrive in the digital world that we live in. COVID or not, we live in a digital world, plain and simple, to facilitate a lot of the things that we want. Whether it's we're looking for a new car, whatever, we use the internet, we're digital. So I want to go over this today with you, like best practices and things that we can actually help you as advisors put into your practice, and even some tactics today to help you guys get a better piece of digital assets out there. All right, let's jump in here.
Yeah, I bet you didn't realize how important it would be with the pandemic happening. It's like if you were on the fence to going digital, you kind of just got thrown over that fence really quickly.
Oh yeah, 100%. Talk about growing pains. But sometimes that's where the best growth happens, is when it's painful.
Yeah.
Like my son is 10 years old and he's literally having growing pains. He's growing so big, like his feet are bigger than my wife's feet now. And it's just like, but he's getting bigger. He's able to do more things now. So sometimes growth comes with pain, and that we all learned that, or a lot of us learned that over this last 18 months when it comes to digital marketing. Mm-hmm. So today, here are some of the things we're going to talk about. What are some of the basic digital marketing assets you should have at a minimum? The difference between owning and renting them. There is a difference. It's something that you have to consider. How to create awesome content. That's one of the biggest roadblocks I hear from a lot of advisors, is like, what do I say? How do I say it? Well, we'll talk about that and some best practices and ways to kind of get over that a little bit. Social media best practices, things you should and shouldn't do. Paid advertising. And this is something that I've actually recently changed my tactics on, or my philosophy on, based upon things that we've been doing and finding out. And of course, what does all this have to do with Chuck Norris? I love Chuck. So we'll talk a little bit about why Chuck is involved here, other than just for fun. Pay attention to the search there. What's Google looking for? So we're trying to have a little bit of fun with this. So one of the oldest marketing tricks in the book, right, is to go where people already are and then be present there. So before the internet, we advertised in the newspaper. We advertised in the Chamber of Commerce, maybe, or a BNI group. We would go to networking events in person. We would hold seminars because that's just what would work. And that's where people were. So we congregated around where people were. So we know that that works, but the medium for that over the last 20 years has just blown up into this thing we call the internet. Remember, communication is at the core of how we tell people we exist, right? So we have to be able to do that, but we have to do it where they are. So as you can see here, Google gets over 3.5 billion searches a day. I mean, it's just mind-boggling how many people use that. And that doesn't include all the other search engines out there. And we know there are billions of users on social media. Facebook's what, pushing 5 billion. LinkedIn is smaller. They're like pushing 800 million right now, but they are doubling down on content creation and they are growing super fast. I was talking to my contact there just last week. They are having 3 people sign up every second at LinkedIn right now. Every second. Yeah, it's crazy, right?
I would not think that, but I guess they've been, trying a lot harder.
They really have, and they've actually created an entirely new division now all around content creation. They recognize this is where people are at and what they want, so they're doubling down on it. I found it very interesting. I've been using LinkedIn for a long time. This was the first conversation I ever had with a real person when I could actually see them and talk to them, which was pretty cool. So anyways, we need to go where people are. People are online. We need to be present there. And then, hopefully get even a small percentage of that traffic to help grow our businesses, to bring in new clients. So what are some of the digital marketing assets that we should be exploring? Well, we have the freedom to choose a ton of different platforms. And I really should have a little asterisk by freedom because part of it's depending on compliance, of course, right? Like we do have federal guidelines and rules, and we have policy overlay on that depending on the environment we're in. But overall, we have the freedom to choose a variety of platforms. We have to be careful not to put all of our assets in one bucket, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when it comes to owning versus renting. But the analogy I use is like we're advisors here, right? So when we're helping design portfolios and all of those things, we look at diversification as one of the strategies we try to employ, right? We don't put all of your money in one stock or whatever, right? So I would say the same applies to your digital marketing assets and efforts. We really should diversify those because people are going to be on multiple platforms. It's interesting. Like there's been this generational shift where people, I would say maybe 45 plus, are starting to actually pull away from Facebook and go to other sources, right? So if we just were on Facebook and nowhere else, well, we're starting to lose some potential market there. So we have to be careful of where we're at. So I think at a bare minimum, you can see here, these are some of the places we need to be. Social, and there's a lot more social than just what I'm showing here. Email, which is actually something really, really powerful. Like, Nora, I know Redtail loves email. Like, I love email. It can actually work really, really well if you build your funnels correctly. And a lot of advisors, I think, neglect that just because there's an art and a science just to building an email funnel, right? There's so much to it. So very, very important. And then, of course, having a website or multiple websites is also very important. So these are just some of the basic ones out there. I have all of these and more. Yes, I know compliance might say, well, you can't use this one or you can't use that. But at this point, most firms have said, hey, we've got these approved places you can go have as your digital assets. If they're saying you can't have any, you might want to consider making a change. I'm just going to throw that out there, right? Because the world is changing. More and more people are going to these places. So if you can't have access to them, that's actually really going to, put you in a hamstring situation.
Yeah, and I have like a public relations background, and they always say, you got to control the message. So if you're not controlling the message by putting things out there, people are going to make up their own assessment of you. So if you can be found and people can find content that you're providing, it can kind of control that picture that they're forming.
Oh man, that is so true. I love that you brought that up. We control it refers like a digital footprint, your persona, whatever. We can control that, and if we're not putting anything out there, that still says something, right? If I'm looking to hire anybody, I'm going to go Google them. If I'm looking to buy a car, I'm going to research that dealership. And if I'm looking for you and I can't find you, that's weird, right? Like I'm just thinking like, okay, well, why aren't they online? This is really odd. And it just get in. And the last thing you want a prospective client doing is saying, huh, that's weird, right? They're having that internal dialogue, or maybe they're just feeling it. They haven't even articulated it, but it's enough to say, I'm going to go away from this thing. I'm going to go find somebody else, right? So totally to what you're saying there, Nora. I think that's spot on. Excuse me. I see a question here about hearsay. There are a lot of different texts that you can use to monitor, archive your social content. And yes, I actually do use hearsay personally. I don't post anything through it though. I just use it to archive because I have to. That's just part of the game. And I'm not going to try to go around and do things I'm not supposed to do. So yes, I use it, but I don't use it to post anything. And we can talk more about that if you guys have more questions. So at a minimum, here's some of the things that you should have. Hopefully you're seeing Chuck there kind of in the corner looking at you guys. So social media, or let's just talk a little bit more about that. So LinkedIn, as I've already alluded to, has been powerful for a long time. It's actually worked really, really well for me to build multiple businesses. It's only getting better and better. So I would say you got to be on LinkedIn and not only have a personal profile that's just beautiful, but also a business page. If you've got a firm, so like maybe you're a solo shop, but you can still, like, and you're operating under a different brand name, you should have a business page for that so people can go check that out. Your personal profile should be amazing. It should let people get to know you. And we can talk a little bit more about some of these best practices, but these are things you should have at a minimum, because at some point, if someone's looking to hire you, they're going to go to these places just because they're well known. And if they see you have a profile, but they can't view it because of your privacy settings, or they look at your profile and you haven't posted anything in a year, like that's kind of weird. Your links are broken. It just does not provide a good feeling, a good experience. So these things should be made to look really, really good. Compliance has their policy of like how you can do this and what you can do, but they're pretty generous from what I've seen most of the time, especially if you're willing to have that dialogue with them to say, hey, like, I know I got to put disclosures here, but do I really have to put them in my about section? Can I put them down further in another section and actually tell people who I am? Because that's how it was for me initially, and I was able to challenge that and got it through. So don't just take things for granted. I would say have some great, meaningful dialogue with your compliance folks to see what you can do to make things better. They're there to help us. They're there to support us, but sometimes they're not quite sure how these things work. Same for Facebook. Have personal and business pages. Another advisor I work with is pretty cool. She's got a personal page that's just personal for like actual friends, but then she created almost like a duplicate page, but it's her name and then like financial advisor. And it's technically a business page, but it's still personal. And she gets a ton of traction on that when she posts things there, even though it's more business related. So you can do that. And then you can actually have business pages for your firm if you actually have your own brand name and things like that. But again, just like LinkedIn, you have to be personal, you have to be relevant, you have to be consistent. We'll talk more about some of these best practices in a moment, but definitely these are things to have. And you might say, well, I don't really like using Facebook, or I don't use LinkedIn a whole lot. It doesn't matter so much what you like or use so much. It matters a lot more where the consumer and customers are going. At the end of the day, we have to be where they are, remember? So if they're on these places, which they are, then we should have our information there. Twitter is great as well for shorter bits of information to drive following, things of that nature. That's one I actually have not put as much effort and energy into. I know a lot of advisors who have and have a tremendous amount of success there. So it's a strong tool. I would also argue they're actually getting better too. They've done a really good job of improving things. So these are at a minimum, I would say, the things that you should have. Depending on your compliance environment, you might be able to offer more. It really just depends. Websites. This is your digital storefront. If you don't have one, how are people going to be able to figure out if they want to, work with you? They just won't. So I think these are so important. I've used like the cheeseburger reference in the past, and you might have the best cheeseburger in town for the clients that you serve, but if they can't take a look at your storefront, or if they get there and it looks really dirty and old and they're not going to want to come in. So it's got to look beautiful. You have to have a great corporate website, and we'll talk about a little bit more here in a second about what you should have on that website. you should be blogging. Now that blogging, for example, when I teach advisors through Conneqtor, I recommend that they actually have two websites. I recommend that they have a corporate website that just talks about them and their firm and their services and their pricing and all those things. And then a separate educational blogging site that's just around blogging and not sales at all. And that strategy, that tactic is driven by, if someone lands on a blog you've written on your corporate website, very quickly the consumer could think, hey, they're just trying to get me to buy something from them. They're just trying to get me to do this thing, right? And now it's not so much about thought leadership, but it's about sales, and it just doesn't feel quite right. Now, there's arguments for both ways. It can be done right, having one site, but splitting the blogging off, I have found, allows you really to just be creative and educational and position yourself as a massive thought leader. You can always link back to your corporate site. That's cool. There's nothing wrong with that, because if people read your blogs long enough, like, wow, I really like what they have to say. What do they do? Oh, I'm going to go over here and check it out. Now you've already built up that credibility where you've earned the right to say, hey, here's what I do. Take a look at it. Other things you could be using on your website to drive leads, ebooks. Now, we've all probably downloaded one at one point. They're super easy to download and read. I will tell you from experience, they take a lot of work to create, to think it through, not only from the copy standpoint, but also from a compliance standpoint, from an artistic design standpoint, and then setting up the funnels to do those. There is more work involved there than one may realize. However, they work really, really well. You're giving away something for free, or maybe just asking for like a name and an email address, and that's okay. And then you're giving them a ton of value up front. That's what people want, so they can start to say, hey, do I really like this person? Are they giving me the value I thought I would get? Am I getting to know this source as a trusted, credible place to go? And so forth.
Yeah, I think even a nice PDF would work too. Like if you don't want to go the whole ebook route, I've seen a lot of success. I feel like, download this PDF to see milestones you should be reaching or whatnot. And it draws me in.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I think we've all done that, right? Like, it doesn't have to be a 20-page ebook, right? It could be a 1 or 2 page infographic, right? That's in a PDF format, done quick. You've given me some instant value. I might not buy anything from you today, but now I'm on your radar. And if you've set up your email nurturing sequence correctly, I'm going to keep sending you emails, right, to remind you that I've given you that value, and I might have other value for you, right? But that's good, warm marketing. It's not pitchy. It's not salesy. It's education, because people want to buy, but they want to buy from a place that they feel good about buying, that they trust, that they know. So we can help them do this. Webinars, the same thing. You can do live like this one, but then like Redtail and Conneqtor, we're both going to take this recording and we'll put it on our websites as replays, right? And this is another way to do, again, more soft marketing and really leverage that asset that we have on our website. SEO, for those of you who don't know what that is, it's search engine optimization. This is a really important organic game to drive traffic. We'll talk a little bit more about paid traffic in a little bit here, but SEO is really important, and you can do a really good job with that. It's getting harder just because the world is saturated with online stuff, but you can still do a really good job if you get creative. And then video is also something that you can have on or off your website. I do have it on there. Again, it's another way for people to see you, look into your eyes, hear your voice, and get a better idea of like, who is this person and what's their story and why are they here and who do they help and all of these things that they have questions about. It's great stuff. Email, I already alluded to this, but your website. And so if you can see, we've got a bit of a funnel going on. If you guys have noticed this, we can use the social stuff to drive people to our website. The website's going to get traffic from social, but also from organic, right? Then that's going to lead to email automation. The email automation can actually lead them back to the website and to the social. So these things are all working together, but ultimately you can see here on the email thing, CTAs, that means call to action. Eventually you're going to have a call to action, whether it's registering for a webinar like today, or to download another asset, or to maybe schedule a meeting with that advisor after you've received 5 or 10 emails from them. Email is a great way to do things. I would say that email is not even close to dead. Email is amazing. It works really well if you build it correctly. Like, there are books written just on email marketing. There's a lot to it there. But these are things that should be set up in place. The beautiful thing about almost everything you see here is you set it up once and then you can automate almost all of it. So yes, it's a lot of work to get this stuff set up, but now once it's automated and you're only coming back and tweaking things and doing this or that, it actually doesn't take up a whole lot of your time. So anyways, these are the things that I would recommend at a minimum you have to really get your piece of the digital assets to really have a foothold to grow your online presence. Any questions or comments at this point?
Yeah, and I know it seems like a lot of work, but something like creating that blog, you're going to share it on social, you're going to share it on email. So you're kind of distributing it through those mediums. So the juice is worth the squeeze.
That's great. I love that. Yeah. It totally is. I have made a lot of money because of this right here, just doing this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I have grown multiple businesses because of this right here. So this stuff does work. And unfortunately, what I see sometimes, Nora, is that like as advisors, we aren't meant to be marketers first. We're advisors. We're here to help our clients with all this stuff with their money. That's what we do. But we're also business owners, and part of owning a business is marketing to drive in new growth. And what I see unfortunately happen sometimes is that advisors don't think they have the time to do the things that we see here on this page. So then they will go and spend X dollars on some shiny object that claims to solve all of their digital marketing problems. And then 6 months later, they've wasted thousands of dollars, have no leads, and they're frustrated. And then they start all over again. And it's the analogy I use is it's like you're looking at high-end fixtures for your master bathroom, but you haven't hired an architect to build your house yet, right? You need the blueprints, you need the foundation, you need all of those things first.
And Gary does have a question. He's looking for suggestions of some third parties that can do a great job of the heavy lifting.
So this is a tough one. I struggle with this. Honestly, like some of this stuff you shouldn't outsource at all initially. These are things that you need to build, because if you go to a digital market, so I have a digital marketing team that helps me do a lot of things at this point. But if I had hired them day one without going through the things that I just showed you guys, I can go back here. If I had hired someone to help me with all this stuff, but not having gone through all the other things first, like who is my ideal client? What am I all about? What do I do? My persona? What's my style of writing? If I hadn't figured all those things out first, then any third party I hire would be white labeling everything because they didn't know who I was. So now my content, my website, my profiles would look the same as every other advisor that they are serving out there, almost all of them. So now I become just generic, plain vanilla. So at some point, Gary, I think this is a great question. There are amazing firms out there that can do a lot of the heavy lifting ongoing, but initially you kind of have to be your own architect. You have to find your own voice. And an analogy I would use is, would you hire a stranger to go to a networking or cocktail party for you and comment as if they were you? Right? Like
it'd be funny, but not.
It'd be funny, but you wouldn't. I mean, it's just like, it'd be also kind of creepy. Like, what? Like, you're not Gary, but you're talking as if you are Gary. Like, I don't understand, right? It just doesn't make sense. So
yeah, it could be like that robot thing that's standing there speaking on your behalf, where it's like, is there a person here? Press 0.
Yeah. So so Gary, you have to do all this stuff first, and then you need to find a digital marketing team that can help amplify everything that you've built. They can help tweak things. They can do more of the technical stuff, because at some point you shouldn't do all of this stuff on your own. At some point you should outsource as much of that as possible. There are multiple third parties. I use a firm in South Africa actually called Prime Pixels to do all of my social media digital marketing stuff.
Wow.
I love them. They're great. I've been using them for years, and it's just been, it's been amazing. So they're great. I would highly recommend them, but there are firms here in the States that do amazing jobs as well. So it really depends on what you're looking for. Just know that if you're going to hire for heavy lifting here in the States, you're going to pay a lot more than you would if you're outsourcing overseas. Just keep that in mind.
Yeah, I can throw in some marketing tools that we partner with too, that do create content to kind of check out. But definitely, I think I relate it to workflows too with Redtail, where there's tons of partners out there that sell workflows and you could buy them and it's great, but you still have to go in and do that hard work of injecting your secret sauce in it.
Exactly.
So you can buy all the workflows or buy all the third-party companies, but you still have to kind of do that front end work of, what do you do that's special? What makes your reviews unique?
That is so spot on. So one thing, so Adam and I just did a podcast episode about this. It's not live yet. I'm writing a blog about it, and I'm actually talking about this in a presentation for Riskalyze later this year. Something really interesting has happened over the last 10, 15 years. We've had all this amazing tech come into the advisor space, Redtail included, to help us do all of the things that need to get done as being advisors. So all the things we used to do manually are now being able to be done by tech. So what's happened with that shift? Well, it's made the human element so much more valuable and important versus than how it ever has been before. So now we have to double down on our human element about who we are. How do people connect with us? Why should somebody work with me versus the other advisor? Because I probably have a very similar tech stack to the next advisor. So tech is no longer this magical thing that makes us better. It's a standard. It's a requirement. So now this human element becomes so much more important. Mm-hmm. So it's a big question, Gary. I like it. And there's a ton of firms out there to do that. You need to find a firm that understands you, that's going to help you, it's going to work well with you, and not just give you canned content. I think those are some things I would really consider as you're going through it. Canned content's not going to work. So renting versus owning, this is kind of important, just something to consider as you're going. Your social media channels, YouTube, these are things that you don't own. Some of the stuff you do, but some of you don't. So, an example is like LinkedIn or Facebook. They have algorithms and their sites can go down. They can change things. So if you're using that as your only marketing avenue, as your only digital assets, and their system goes down, they decide to do something differently. Now all of a sudden, your entire marketing plan just blew up in your face. So you have to be really careful about that. So it's okay to rent these spaces. I think we all do, especially when the rent is free. But we have to be careful knowing that we can't just do it in one place. So this is an interesting comment here actually about this. What are some of the major red flag mistakes? We'll get into that, Mark. Great question. We'll get into that. Yeah, definitely. Okay. So email, this is kind of a rent to own type of thing. You have to use a third-party vendor to run your email campaigns, but you still own that content, which is super valuable and important. Websites, you totally own those. Yes, sure, you're hosting them somewhere else, but the content are on them. You control and you create, you can change. You are in charge of those assets. So ultimately what's going to happen is that you're going to have to own and rent. It's going to be a combination type of thing, which is okay. But just know that. So if your entire strategy is just social media, that's an added risk. Because if social media decides to change tactics, like what if LinkedIn went back to just being a resume site? All of a sudden, I mean, is it going to happen? Most likely not. But what if it did, right? Things happen, things change. I mean, LinkedIn used to not be owned by Microsoft, right? Things change, and these changes usually happen pretty fast. So anyways, we want to make sure we own these things. The analytics tools out there are free. And technically, we don't own the tools, but the data we pull from the tools, we can own and use to our advantage, which is super helpful. And then the ebooks, the webinars, we already talked about these. These are assets you actually create yourself that you can, again, put on other assets that you own and or rent. So it's just really important to consider that. Do you have a landlord or are you the landowner? And what happens if things change? Just make sure that you are addressing these things and thinking about this as you're building out your digital and social strategy.
Yeah, I know as users, we hate when they make an update to Facebook or Instagram or something. And I've seen even influencers start to get mad too, because they're like, no one's seeing my content now. They changed everything.
Right? Yeah, I know. It's super frustrating. I knew a small wedding invite company years ago where they were crushing it on SEO and bringing in a lot of new clients, and they weren't paying for any ads. It was all SEO. It's great. And then Google changed their algorithms for SEO and how things worked, and their sales plummeted almost by 100% overnight. Right. And so they were just focused on one thing and one thing only. And then that change literally happened overnight, and then their sales totally changed. So you have to be careful. These things can happen at any time. They usually don't tell us of these changes until after they've made them. So we have to be careful and prepared for that. So anyways, where should we start with any of these social sites, websites, things of that? Like, I mean, part of me wants to say shotgun approach, right? Because we need to have these things. But also part of this is defining who we want to work with. Who is our ideal client? It's our job to know where they hang out. Where are they spending their time online? And a lot of this data is more accessible than you may think. You can find a lot of this out pretty quickly by just Googling a couple things, doing a few searches on Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever, and find out. And when you find that out, that's probably your beachhead. Go where those people are. For me, my strategy with my wealth management firm and with Conneqtor was LinkedIn is the place to go. That's where my ideal client is hanging out. So I'm going to go be present there and crush that while I'm building the other things on the side. So that's, but it's your job to know that. And if you don't know who your ideal client is, because I'll tell you right now, it should not be people with jobs. It should be a little bit more defined than that, or a lot more defined. So really important to know that. And once you know who they are, then you're going to know where they are. And then that's where you can start to be present and start creating content that resonates with them. You remember, you're creating all this as a robust digital footprint. And although it might feel like it's in silos initially, it's all going to be coming together, and it should really be one consistent message across multiple platforms. So people can vet you, you can share your message, amplify it, and so on. All right, how to create some awesome content. So more about the who, know your niche. Because if you know who you're talking to, like I know I'm talking to advisors today, so it's probably good that I'm not, making this whole presentation, geared towards accountants, for example, right? We know your audience, and that's who your ideal client is. So who are you talking to? What's important to them? What questions do they have on their mind? What's their persona? What do they worry about? What are things that they try to do? What are they searching for? These are the things that you can find out pretty quickly by just a little bit of research, and then you can create content around that. And a lot of this goes back to you. Who are you? What type of person are you? What are you passionate about? What do you know more than most people? Because that usually leads us to working with a particular type of individual. There's riches in the niches. We've said this before. This is a well-known thing, but it is so true. You can't be everything to everybody. So try to be an expert, a subject matter expert for a certain market. There's more than enough clients out there for you all to be as successful as you could ever imagine. So just go find your niche and make as much money as possible, right? It's really gonna help drive everything with your digital marketing efforts. All of your content should be related around this niche, so it just fits, so it makes sense. So that's one of the things that you can do to create awesome content. Knowing that I'm speaking to advisors from the Conneqtor standpoint, or for my wealth management firm, I work with founders that are world travelers. Like, I know these main aspects of who these people are. So now my content can be created around them, whether it's a blog post, it's a picture, it's a video, it doesn't matter. That content is serving that person because I know that person. And once you figure that out, actually content creation gets really, really easy once you figure this out. Use stuff that happens in your life offline. Like, life isn't all online. Maybe it was a little bit more the last 18 months because of lockdowns and all the craziness that we're going through, but life still happens offline. So use those experiences, use those meetings, those conversations as content creation ideas, because it's going to resonate with people. People want to see that you're a real person. So tell me a little bit more about who you are. Let me into your life just a little bit. For example, I did a picture of my son reading a cool book about female trailblazers last week. But I made very, a simple point not to make sure that people could see my son's face. Like, he's only 10. I don't need to put all that out there, but people could say, like, okay, he's in his living room. This is Derek's son. This is personal, but I'm not revealing too much. So there's an art that you'll get to it, right? And also partially about your comfort level. But use these experiences to share with people, because that's how we connect. That's how we figure out who we like, because shared commonalities, passions, interests, all of those things. Use those events from your life, put them online. Let people get to know you in that way. It's amazing how much great content I've come up with something that happened in my life outside of the internet. And then was just able to put that online and get so much positive feedback from people. There is a lot more to creating awesome content, but if you can figure out these two core components, the rest of it actually gets pretty easy. So here's some things that you should have as part of your marketing efforts on your website, especially, but in other places that you're on. These are some of the main things that people are going to be thinking about and wondering and have these questions in mind. So make sure you're answering these questions. What does your company do? What do you do as an advisor? List your specific services, but don't do it in a laundry list. Like I do 401k rollovers, I do health insurance, I do IRAs. Like that's really kind of boring, and people aren't looking at a McDonald's menu when they're coming to your website. That's not what they want. But list your services, but also what are the real world problems you're helping people solve? Because they're not thinking about it so much as a 401k rollover, but like, hey, I have an old retirement account. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with it. Put it in real world terms that people understand. Like, oh, okay, I get it. Johnny helps me do this. Okay, cool. Again, who you are should be everywhere. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Let them get to know you a little bit. Who are you as an individual? Do you like to travel? Do you like animals? What kind of books do you like to read? Like, give them some insights into who you are. If they don't like you, it's a high likelihood that they're not going to trust you, and then they're never going to do business. And a case in point, I brought on a new client last week, and we had our first 45-minute meeting where he even said, he's like, Derek, I don't really care what you do right now. I just want to see if I like you and if we get along. And we had a great chat. It was great. It was great. I loved it. And I said, well, that's the only reason I want to meet with you, because if I don't like you, I don't want to work with you either. And we both got a chuckle out of it, but it's so true. Like, we don't want to have like this pushy sales thing where we're just trying to push a meeting and get a client on board. And then 6 months later, like, we really regret bringing that client on board. So make sure you're kind of vetting these people, get to know them, let them, get to know you and see if you actually like each other. If you do, the whole relationship's going to go a whole lot better.
Yeah, I know in Redtail we house user-defined fields where you can track different answers for people, like their alum or their favorite restaurant, their pet's name, their favorite basketball team. So it's kind of like share your user-defined fields too. Like, I've never thought of that, but yeah, you want to kind of make that forward-facing as well.
100%. So another funny example, I had a meeting with, I can't say who, but he's part of a fast growing tech company. We're talking about some collaboration. This was last week. First meeting ever, virtual. He initially called in because he was just traveling before he got into the virtual meeting, but I saw his phone number, like the area code. I'm like, well, that's where I grew up. It's the same area code. So I asked him, I'm like, dude, like, where are you from? And he says, I'm like, well, that's where I grew up. And then I'm like, well, what high school did you go to? I'm like, well, that's where I went. Wow. And we had never met, but we were like 6 years apart, but we came from the exact same community within a couple miles of each other, same high school, everything. But that's how the meeting started. We connected on those non-business areas first to really see if we liked each other. And we had some good chit chat about it. And then we were able to jump into business. That's what we desire. We desire human connection. That's just how it works. Once we have it, the rest, takes care of itself. Pricing. Too many advisors don't list their pricing, or they bury it so much that it's really hard to figure out what it is. People want to buy. People want to work with us. They want our help, but tell them what you charge. Like, how are you compensated? Tell them what you charge. If you're charging assets under management, what's your fee schedule? And don't bury it in your EDV. Put it right on your website. I have it all there. I mean, that's one of the things people think about. And if they can't find a price, it doesn't feel right. So they're gonna go off to the next thing. You don't go to Best Buy to buy a TV and not compare the prices of the TVs. You still might buy the more expensive TV, but you want to know what the prices are and the features and all of the things, right? So please, please, please put your price on your website. Let people figure that part out. It's going to really make it clear. And that way, when they do contact you, they already know what you charge. So it's not like it's like an issue you have to address and it's the white elephant in the room. It's already been dealt with, done. And then what makes you unique? I referenced this earlier. Great tech is no longer the differentiator so much as it is the standard. So why should people work with you versus the next advisor? why, and it all comes back to the human connection, right? Who you are, why they're going to connect with you more than the next person down the road. So these are very important things that you should have with your brand, your digital content. All of it should be interwoven into all of your digital assets that you have. So here's some best practices. This goes back to Mark's question earlier. So we'll jump into this a little bit. So your profiles, you can imitate what other people have done because there are some best practices out there, but don't copy them. I've literally had other advisors go to my LinkedIn profile, copy it word for word, like hobbies, like that I'm a triple citizen, everything. And then they put it on their own profile. I'm like, what are you doing? Right? Like it makes you look even worse. So you can copy like format, the types of things that might be in there, but make it about you. So, look at what the people out there that are having stronger followings, that get a lot of engagement. What are they doing with their profiles, their content, and so forth? And start trying to do that, but do it in your own way. Please don't copy somebody else word for word. That's called plagiarism, and it's also just really bad form. So don't do that. You can learn a ton from what works and doesn't work, but don't copy it, please. Real-time feedback is really important. So, go back to the networking cocktail party example. So you show up, you ask a really great, profound question, or you state something. People start asking you questions or commenting on it, really getting engaged, but you just take off and you go to the bathroom. You're gone and you never come back, right? Like that doesn't work. You have to be part of that conversation. You have to engage with these people. It shows that you appreciate them getting involved. It shows that you're aware that there's a conversation going on, and also the algorithms love them. So make sure that you are driving that engagement, you're having conversation, and you are being there and giving real-time feedback. Like don't post something and then come back a week later and say, oh, thanks for your comments. Like by then it's all gone. It's dead. It's gone. And then customize for each platform. Each platform is going to work a little bit differently. Yes, you can copy and paste a post from LinkedIn to Facebook, but you might want to edit it a little bit, switch out, maybe a few words or the design of it, or maybe to change the picture a little bit, make sure you're using hashtags correctly. But overall, you want your consistent theme and messaging to be the same. We're going to get into a little bit more of this here per Mark's question. I've got some additional things here that we can do. So interact and engage, as I just said, show people you appreciate engaging with content. Be quick to responses, whether it's an email, someone filled out a form, someone sent you a DM on social. Don't leave them hanging. Try to be none of us are perfect, but try to be the best that you can in getting back to them and saying, hey, thanks for your note or whatever, just so they know that there's actually, some appreciation and connection there.
And we've all kind of seen those pictures where people are like, oh, I'm just here for the comments. Right. So people will just look at the comments too and see how you're interacting or see your thoughts on other people's questions and kind of make a judgment that way as well.
That is such a great point. They do. People will, I call it creeping, but they do. They will look like, what are you up to? Like, how are you engaging with other people not on your post or within the comments? Super, super important because it shows who you are. It's a little bit, you haven't thought out the post when you're writing a response to someone else's post. You're just writing it. It's real quick. So that's insight into who you are and how you respond and interact with people. It's great. Mm-hmm. No spam, please. I also call this pitch slapping. Don't pitch slap people. There's all these lead gen tools out there that say, hey, we'll get you 100 leads a month. And all it is sending cold messages to people, whether it's email or DMs on LinkedIn. LinkedIn, in fact, has actually really limited that. As some of you may know, you can only request 100 connections a week now, where before it was unlimited, although they would start to get mad if you started to ask for too many. And that's because they're looking for people to use it as a content creation connection place, not a place to spam. I see some of you guys are creeping here already. It happens, folks, but don't just, try to be engaging. You don't want to be that guy or girl in the corner standing by the fake plant at the cocktail party, not talking to anybody. That's creeping. It just looks weird. So don't be that person. So don't spam people, just be human, be normal. The second somebody connects with you, like here's a specific example, Mark, you connect with somebody on LinkedIn. right? Then maybe they fit your ideal client profile. Maybe that's why you sent them a connection request. Don't send them a message 4 seconds after they connect with you saying, hey, thanks for connecting. Do you want to buy this product from me? Right? Don't do that. People hate that stuff. You could say, hey, thanks, I appreciate it. I'm here as a resource. Is there any type of content that you'd like to see me, publish, blah, blah, blah. And then just go doing your normal content stuff. They will start seeing your information. If they like it, they'll contact you eventually. Stay positive. Don't troll people. Don't be rude. Facebook tends to have a much bigger problem with this than LinkedIn does. That's one of the reasons I really love LinkedIn is 99% positive. It's a really good place where people just, even with some kind of touchy subjects, people are still really positive for the most part, which I love. That's where it should be. It's just so much better than doing it. I mean, Facebook works, but it can get pretty negative on Facebook. So you just have to be careful, but don't be that person, right? Be positive. It's okay to disagree and even say that in your comments, but respect what other people are saying. I've really opposed what some people have said, even on some of my posts, but at the end of the day, hey, I respect your position, and who am I to say that you're wrong and I'm right? It doesn't matter. Let's just have some good dialogue and build this relationship up. That's what it's about. There's some good questions here. Mark, self-policing tools like LinkedIn, they do, right? People, if you're spam, people can mark you on that for sure. Let's see, what if you're using LinkedIn to connect to grow your network? Introductory call. Then if they ask what you do to open the door for conversation. So LinkedIn to grow your network is great, Shannon, for sure. And you should. And what you can do after you connect with somebody is you can send them that quick message. Say, hey, thanks for connecting. If you'd like to meet and have an introductory call, let's do that. But I always would even say, I promise I'm not going to try to sell you anything. Let's just have an introductory call. Remember, this goes back to being human and connecting on that human level first. So yes, you can do that. And if they ask hey, what do you do? That's an open invitation to talk more about that and maybe even suggest a meeting. But, inbound marketing really means that they're driving that bus and you're helping them get to that destination. Good questions coming here. I like this. Karen, how many times a week do you post and So posting, this is interesting. So I've been speaking with LinkedIn about this. They say minimum 2 to 3 times a week. I asked if I can do 4 to 5 or more, and they're like, yep, that's actually great. We love that if you would, but no more than once a day. So keep that in mind. I tend to not post on weekends. If I do, it might be on a Saturday morning, and it might tend to be a little bit more of a personal post, but that's hit or miss. Good question though.
Yeah, and it's definitely those algorithms, like quality over quantity, because
100%. Yep.
Yeah, I could go back to someone's page and be like, oh, 30 of these didn't even show up on my timeline. So it is
exactly
nice to go back and refer to them, but you want to get those ones that are going to meet those algorithm requirements to reach people.
Yes, that's where this is an art and a science. The art is knowing how to craft your message and be human and spark conversation. The science is how do we do that to maximize the algorithm?
Mm-hmm.
Now, we'll never know what that black box is or how it works. We can guess and we can get some pointers, but we're never going to know for sure. So, but one of them is, yes, post once a day, no more. Don't use 40 hashtags like they do in Instagram, things of that nature, and just be human. Like Facebook, I just read the other day, Facebook is actually penalizing people for content that's too salesy. They really want it to be more organic, non-salesy, more educational type of content. Let's see, question from Nick. Did you say you like to post personal posts? So Nick, I don't do a ton of personal posts on LinkedIn, but I do to let people into my life. I got to do what I preach here, right, brother? So I do, but I try to weave in a little bit of how I tie it back to some aspect of business. And that's really important. So nothing wrong with being personal, but just and it takes time to learn this. I mean, if you're curious, go look at my LinkedIn profile. I would encourage all of you to connect with me, just kind of see how I do it. Even Redtail's done some cool stuff with dogs, right? You guys have done some really cool, because obviously that's part of your brand, but it's tying business and personal together, which is so cool. And human beings love that.
Yeah.
Let's see, a good question from Shannon. How do you weed through all of these lead generating companies? Politically correct answer would be I pretty much don't use any of them. I try to do all of my own lead gen. Organic really seems to be the place to be. Let's see, you come from the large banking world, you're new independent. Yeah. So, I mean, walk-ins are really tough anyways right now, Shannon, but people are looking for what we do. So this is where you have to let people know who you are and get to know you. So if you're completely like not existent on social media, you can't expect people to come in and knock on your door, whether it's digital or brick and mortar. They're just not going to do it. Organic is the long road. It takes a longer time to do things than just paying for quick lead gen. So you're gonna have to be careful with that. But if you're gonna do work with any type of lead gen company, vet who they are. One, do they have expertise in working with advisors? A lot of lead gen companies say they do, but they have no experience whatsoever. They have to have, because with the compliance stuff that we deal with and the way we have to do things, they have to know how it works for us specifically. And then, are the founders, who are they? Are they people that were advisors that failed being advisors, so now they're trying to sell to advisors? Or, like what's their connection to the advisory world? We have a really neat tribe of advisors, and people need to know who we are and how we operate to really, I think, best serve us. So just keep that in mind as you're looking at different services. So another best practice here is challenge the status quo. So I love this. This could be a timely topic just to spark conversation. You're asking people to think a little bit and to challenge their thinking, and then drive that conversation and do it in a polite manner. Like I did a post on this maybe 2 weeks ago. I did a poll on, should financial advisors be required to have a COVID passport to show they've been vaccinated to go back to the office? And my opinion in the matter doesn't matter, but I wanted to see what the greater good was thinking. And the post went viral, had a ton of votes, it had a ton of comments, and it was really cool to see people from both sides. Again, it was all positive, but it was great because a ton of conversation there. It was timely, and it was on what was on people's minds. So challenge the status quo. It's okay. Just be respectful, be polite. Don't be rude. Don't troll people. Be consistent. We talked about how many times to post a week. Be consistent. If you're only going to post 3 times, well, be consistent. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, whatever. Be consistent. It's kind of like with a YouTube channel, or like maybe there's a TV show that you watch once a week, right? Or nightly. You expect it to be on at the same time every week, right?
Yeah.
So, the same is true with social media. People are going to kind of start to get used to your cadence. And if you all of a sudden don't show up for a while, like, well, that's weird. I guess I don't like this channel anymore. This show's over. I'm going to go find another one. So be consistent. Let people know you're going to be there on a regular basis. And you just have to build it into your calendar. My digital marketing, social media presence now it's in lieu of cold calling. I don't schedule time to cold call. I don't schedule time to go knock on doors. I schedule time to actually be online. That's how I do what I do. And I haven't calculated it for 2021, but in 2020, my LinkedIn organic posts alone reached over 1 million people.
Wow, congrats.
It's awesome, right? I got a lot of business out of it. And like, where else can you do that? I can't cold call that many people, right? It just doesn't work. So just things to think about. A little bit about paid advertising. A lot of folks will just say, hey, I'm going to go boost that post. I'm going to go buy, ads, and it's going to be great. It's hit or miss, and more often than not, it's going to be miss at this point. And here's why. There's really high competition for this space. So you can see I've got a little screenshot here. This is this Google Keyword Planner. And you can see those dollar figures. That's the low and the high end of a bid for each of these keywords to place if you're going to actually run ads. And that's not for lead. That's to literally just get someone to click on your ad.
Yeah.
Most people aren't going to convert. If you assume like 1% of people are going to convert and you get 100 people to come in, like do the math, that adds up really, really quickly. So there's a lot of competition because there's a lot of money to be made from bringing people in for the industry that we're in. So it's really expensive, but it's also tough because the algorithms are favoring all sorts of different things. It's really tough. And what's frustrating, from a high competition standpoint, is there are companies that have nearly unlimited marketing budgets that can spend $1 million a month on driving in leads. I would say 99% of advisors can't get anywhere near that. So if I'm spending $500 to $1,000 a month on Google ads or Facebook ads, like how do I compete with that other stuff? So I'm not saying don't do it. It can work. And, you know, as I say here, it can actually kind of be fuel in the fire if you've done the organic stuff correctly. But it's really a really tough game. And what's going to happen is you're going to be super frustrated. You're going to go in. I'm sure some of the people on this webinar today have experienced this. You go spend a ton of money for 3 or 6 months. You get very few leads or no leads. The leads aren't great. You're frustrated. You've just wasted 6 months and now you got to figure out something else. So it can work, but I did not start with it at all. I started 100% organic and then layered on paid advertising as I went. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to answer Brian's question real quick. Do I post business type stuff on my personal? That's a really interesting question, Brian. So my personal Facebook page, it's super private. It's super small. I have almost no friends and I post there maybe once a year. So I don't do anything there. Like I've chosen LinkedIn to be my platform where I really open up personally. So when I do business type posts, those can happen on my personal profile on LinkedIn, but I also have business pages profiles that I post a ton of more business related content on. And I do that all on LinkedIn. So personal, like don't just do a post about like what you had for breakfast, because I don't know how you would tie that back to work. Okay. But there are ways that you can tie things back to the work you do or how you help people or the lifestyle that you envision for your clients and the thing that nature. Like what are your values and how are you living that life? Like one of my mottos is like, I want to live my best life today and plan to live it tomorrow. So I try to help my clients do the same thing. So what better way than to be that example for them, to show them like, hey, like you can do this. Here's how I'm doing it. So again, it's an art, Brian. It's not something you're going to figure out day one. But the beautiful thing about social media is you're going to know within hours if your content's good or it's not, because you'll see how well people are interacting with it or not. And if it's not good, then you know, okay, I don't do that content anymore. I'm going to go try something else now. It's a great question. So anyways, paid advertising, it can work, but don't lead with that as your only strategy. The other stuff, it does take longer. Yeah, you can go boost a post in 30 seconds, but is it really worth the time and money? I would rather turn off that spigot of money coming out of my wallet every month and put more time into the organic stuff and then layer on this stuff later. It's just kind of fun to see if this works. I love this. I wish we had video music to this, but at least it's kind of fun. So Chuck Norris is amazing. This is how it's like Chuck Norris is like involved here and why I picked him is that you can Google Chuck Norris and he's done an amazing job of his brand and putting it out there. Yeah, he was a movie star, but that was a long time ago, right? He's just done a really good job of his personal brand online, letting people get to know him, having a great website, having great social media, all of those things. So yeah, it's a little hokey. I wanted to have fun with this. You know, this is a little bit different today, but at the end of the day, like we can learn a lot from what Chuck has done. Like he crushes it online and it's not by accident, right? So we can do the same thing, maybe not to this scale because we're not movie stars here, but we can learn a lot from what he's doing and how he's doing it. And he's still making money just because of his digital assets. It's crazy, right? So it's definitely possible. But that's what it all comes back to Chuck. Like that's why Chuck's been throughout this whole thing. He's a brand unto himself. Mm-hmm. People connect with personal brands, right? That's what they do. And then like, okay, well, what does that brand represent? Oh, they represent financial freedom or they help people do this. Yeah, I want to go get involved with that. I don't connect with you because you sell whole life insurance. I don't care. What I care about is like, who are you as a person and how can you help me live the life that I want to live? That's what's important. And you do that by showing people great content like Chuck does.
Thanks so much for joining us today for this particular session. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to give us a call at 800-206-5030, option 3 for support, or just shoot us an email over to support@redtailtechnology.com. Thanks a lot and have a great day.